I think we're live again. Again, this is just the third test, and we're just testing. Not very exciting stuff. Okay. All right. Just testing out everything. Again, this is just a test of a new channel that we're going to start in a number of days. I used to have my own local on-air show on television a number of years ago, and we're going to start something online in about 4 or 5 days. We're still just testing this. This is going to be a progressive political channel, and we're looking forward to starting this in a few days. Again, this is just our third test. As you can tell, this is not really set up yet. So, you know, the background and all of that, all those technicalities will be taken care of over the next few days. And I think we're going to be looking at things, you know, from a different point of view, even from many of the progressive commentators that have become pretty popular online. The national, who happens to come from Canada, who I like very much. Kyle Kalinske, who is pretty good. My favorite is Jimmy Dore. They all do very well. And they've gotten better over the last couple of years. Jimmy Dore especially has been spectacular. There are a number of other sites and other commentators. Those are my 3 favorites at this point, with a few others sprinkled in. I look at international commentators also. I've been involved in politics for over 40 years, maybe 50 years or 60 years almost. I ran for office for the first time back in 1984 on a local level. We're in New Jersey, where I'm from. And I ran again here in Massachusetts locally and won a number of times on a local level. And I also worked, when I was in college, I worked for Congressman Florio down in Jersey. I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and so my politics is shaped by Vietnam and the experiences of the Kennedys being murdered and Martin Luther King being murdered, and looking at those things and how those 3 gentlemen who were assassinated, murdered, why they were murdered, and how it has affected our society by the many trillions of dollars. There's been an unbelievable transfer of wealth that really has gone on, not been focused on, concerning those 3 deaths. Because of those 3 deaths, an enormous amount of wealth has been transferred to the richest people in this country and to the largest corporations. And because of those 3 deaths, we have what we have now, which is a nonstop militaristic policy, both foreign policy, just militaristic. You know, Russia couldn't, or Nazi Germany couldn't have been more happy with the military budget that we have, and they'd be so jealous of it. And a militaristic police force, Republican Party that is militaristic from the very beginning to the day to the very end of the day, and that has basically been the same during my entire lifetime. It's shifted a little bit The Democrats, when I was younger, were hard fighters, very progressive, uh, but it was at the end of the New Deal era, and the 60s was a whole new thing, and which I basically lived through. The last draft year of Vietnam was my draft year, 1973. I had to sit in front of a television set and watch them pull out birth dates to see if you're going to volunteer to go get your head blown off somewhere in Southeast Asia for no reason at all. And they only picked a few birth dates that year because it was the very end of the war. And of course, there hasn't been a draft since, because if there is a draft, then you would have 100 times more people in the streets than there is now. As much as Black Lives Matters is in the streets, as much as they've been active, it is nothing compared to what was going on in the late 60s and early 70s, and how an entire generation of uh, of young men and women were in the streets fighting for their lives and